Great. And I see people are already starting to fill in. I'm Anne Marie. I am the Director of Community Education here at the Les Turner ALS Foundation. Before we get started, I just want, let's see if I can get in presentation mode. I just want to remind you all that you are muted and off camera. So just sit back, relax. The webinar should take about an hour today. As previously mentioned, I am recording, so if at any point you need to get up, walk away, or just have to go, you'll be able to access this within the next day or two on our website and our YouTube channel. The other thing is we've saved some time at the end of today's presentation for some questions. Please, please, please utilize the Q&A box for any questions that you may have. Before we get started, I want to, excuse me, thank our industry partners, Mitsubishi Tanaba Pharma America and Biogen, along with the Gilbert and Jacqueline Fern Foundation, who have made this learning series possible. If anybody is interested in learning more about ALS, has some questions about some symptom management or need to make a decision on whether genetic testing is right for you, are you interested in learning more about non-invasive ventilation? Or maybe you're just curious about other learning series that we've done in the past. Those can all be found on our website at lesturnерals.org. And now, without further ado, I would love to introduce you to Linda Levine. She is a trained recreational therapist and educator. She's applied those skills to help people find fulfilling lives using wheelchairs, communication devices, and adaptive equipment. She's taught for 30 years at San Jose State University, including courses on diverse topics such as creating a meaningful life, creativity, identity, play, grief, and even loss. As a life coach, Linda specializes in helping people move through change, whether that's through the loss of a loved one, retirement, career challenges, or just about anything else. In her role as a motivational speaker, she speaks about caregiving, team building, grief, and even clumsy sex and ALS. Linda has a true gift for taking on tough topics with sensitivity and refreshing humor. And along with us is David Buseck. He is a retired engineer who worked with radiation oncology equipment. He was diagnosed with ALS in 2019. He is a board member with the ALS Network and is active in various forms of ALS advocacy. He enjoys playing flute, reading, traveling, and writing. And in 2024, he published Paris, A City of Cultures, which is a book with wheelchair accessible walking tours through beautiful Parisian neighborhoods. He challenges himself to find adaptations and workarounds to continue his activities as much as possible. He and Linda live in San Jose, California, and together they refer to themselves or call themselves Team Tortoise because they are slower than before, but they keep trying new and different ways to get to where they want to go. So Linda and David, welcome. I will stop sharing my screen and you can take on over.
Thank you, Anne Marie and the Les Turner ALS Foundation. It is such an honor to be here. And to everybody who showed up to listen or who may listen in the future, you are our people. David and I, of course, we're in shock to learn that we are part of the ALS community when you get that message. But we have found the kindest, most incredibly generous people in this community, the professionals, the folks with ALS, the caregivers, etc. So today's topic is really about family caregivers and our journey. and specifically partners, but I think all caregivers, even professional caregivers, can get something out of this, we hope. So, as you heard from that very generous, thank you, Anne Marie, introduction, no one could have been more prepared than I am for this journey. I have worked with folks in wheelchairs and adaptive communication. No one could have been more stable in their marriage. David and I have been married for 35 years. We don't shy away from saying what needs to be said. Except we have support around us, family and friends, and still this diagnosis kicked me in the butt from the moment of diagnosis and as David declines. So that's what brought us to today. So thank you for having us. The most important part about my journey is that I get to do it with my beloved David Buseck. So I'm delighted that he is going to share with you, because generally I'm the person doing presentations, but this time he's with me, which I am thrilled. So here we go. So when we talk about family caregivers, there's lots of research out there. I've spoken to people at UC Davis in California about their research on the experiences of people with ALS and family caregivers. And when I started down this road, I thought, oh, I ought to share that with everyone. But then I realized that this audience, made up of the folks in the trenches, either by professional choice or by diagnosis or interest, you already know these things. Being a caregiver is hard. Hiring caregivers is expensive. Depending on caregivers that you hire is wonderful and terrifying, because what if they get sick? What if they don't show up? What if they're not who you think they are? So what we wanted to do today is focus on the family caregiver, and because most of the time it is the partner, the spouse, that is there in the trenches 24/7, and it's tricky. So what we'd like to do is share some tips. And as a caregiver, what I have learned is that if I express myself, if I ask for help, if I keep in mind that as a caregiver, time is so different than it has ever been before, and also if I engage in self-care, as difficult as that is to find time, resources, etc., as a caregiver, if I do that, I'm better off.
All right, so now it's my turn to talk for a little bit. I want sometimes when Linda presents, I end up being the butt of her jokes and such like. So I want to say I approve this message. Um, and a few things I wanted to talk about being the person being cared for. First is that we've been partners for, as Linda said, 35 years, and my illness doesn't end that. So we really feel like we need to work together on managing all sorts of aspects. And I'm very aware that Linda still needs to have her own friends and her own support system, especially when she's devoting more time to my care. She needs outside resources to be able to debrief and talk to. So one of the things that I do is kind of self-triage. I try to pay attention to whether it's something that I can do myself. Maybe I don't feel like it, but I can without any risk to myself or sapping too much energy. And other times, I'll call on her to help me out with things that maybe because I'm tired, I might do at other times. But at the same time, I need to remember not to be a hero. So I've tried to be a hero a couple of times, and it hasn't ended. Fortunately, it hasn't ended badly so far, but it makes me aware that I made a bad decision and I should have asked for help, whether from Linda or someone around me. And it's definitely not good for either one of us when Linda is too stressed or when I'm too stressed. But I'm the more level guy, and she's a little more dynamic. So we try to keep her from being stressed.
So when David talked about my stress level, you've heard of the inner child. Well, David calls the stressed out me the inner child's evil twin. So I go to a place, and that's a warning sign that something needs to shift. So again, I use the acronym to help me stay focused on my needs by saying EATS: express, ask, time, and self-care. When I don't, I just eat and eat and eat. When I don't, ALS eats away at me. And as upbeat and positive as I generally am, I can go to those dark places that I know so many people in this room have been in, where your loved one is asleep and you're lying in bed and your body is trembling, you can't sleep, and all you can think is foreboding thoughts. So those, again, are warning signs that I'm not expressing, asking, noticing time, and self-care, which we'll elaborate on more. So when I say express, it's a wide range of people we're expressing to. So I'm going to refer to ALS, as we all know, and also MND, which is motor neuron disease, because I speak internationally, and that's the term that people use. And I'm not sure if anyone in this audience is more comfortable with that term. So as I said, most caregivers are spouses, and you can feel really alone, even in your partnership, as the caregiver, somebody you love who has a severe disability like this. And then knowing that your spouse has this terrible disease, but it is happening to you. ALS moved into our home, into our marriage, and we both have it on the blueprint of our lives. And that being said, it's not just, oh, poor David, he has ALS. It's, wow, we both have the right to speak and express our wants and needs. And I'll need to tell you, in the first year of David's diagnosis, I didn't do that. I was just in vigilance mode. And also, we've heard this from many couples, that they try and protect each other. They don't want to share that they're worried or they're sad or they're overwhelmed. And I just firmly believe, in the research backs, that that does not work.
So one of the things that we found, as Linda's alluded to, is that we have really looked at the disease very differently. And as happened with us, I think it's been harder for Linda to watch me decline than it has for me to be declining. So some reasons for us, that I imagine other people share some of this, and other people have different ways of looking at it. But I've been aware of my body and the changes from long before diagnosis. And I would mention things every once in a while to Linda, but what I really understand now is that I understated what was going on. So for me, although the diagnosis was hard, it was also a relief that I know what's happening. And that meant that it was, for me, a natural evolution of what were for me years of awareness of excuse me, things going on. So if you look at the little chart on the right, the blue line is me, where I was slowly getting a little more sick. Then at diagnosis, it just kind of changed the slope a little bit, so that I could tell that I might be continuing that. For Linda, she just heard my complaints as normal aging. So what's the big deal? So when I was diagnosed, it was like jumping off a cliff, that she went from having a healthy husband to a husband with a terminal illness. So in her case, on the reddish line, I was perfectly healthy at the beginning. Then there was a jump at diagnosis to, oh my gosh, he has a terminal disease. And what she saw moving into the future was a rapid acceleration. So our perception was very different. And that was a big challenge in the months and probably year post-diagnosis.
So exactly what David said is, my life went from it's all good David is rowing on a competitive crew team. He's climbing mountains, but he's saying, I'm getting a little slower or I stubbed my toe. So it went from life is good to, no, this isn't happening. Oh, and we're different people. You notice I have cartoons in my presentation, and David has graphs. This is very David. And so he's more of a left brain guy. He's always steadier, and I'm always more emotional in positive and not so positive ways.
True.
So when we're talking about expressing ourselves, it's a good idea to just think for a moment about who and what are your support networks. So obviously, counselors and support groups can be lifesavers, but you want to ask people for referrals because, not all groups are the same. Not all facilitators are the same. It can be hard to find a good fit. So you want to shop around. And if you have an experience with a counselor or a group that's not positive or doesn't feel like a good fit, it's not like you should just stop looking. It's like shopping for clothing. You don't give up if you don't find that red shirt when you go shopping, right? You keep looking. And if you buy the red shirt and it doesn't fit, you take it back and start again. So some people with mental health things, they get really precious about it. Just let it be part of your life. You've got a big problem and challenge right now, and you're going to find the support. It's out there. But again, ask your friends, ask your care manager, etc. Also, for me, I've used a lot of non-traditional avenues. So I'm a scrapbooker and a journalist. And so I keep a journal, and that's been really helpful for me. I sometimes am drawing in it. I'm sometimes just writing in it. It's messy. It's got just whatever it is that I need to express, I put in my journal, and that's helpful to me. David and I are both in a writing group. It's not an ALS writing group, it's just a writing group, but I've written a lot about the challenge I have emotionally and my fears. And being witnessed by the other people in the room is really awesome. I've also personally relied on my spiritual community, and I've got 2 spiritual women's groups that's been a source of joy. And again, they're not ALS specific. It's just I like being in environments where people are talking about existential things. David's sister, who goes to our appointments with us, who is wonderful to have extra ears, that's also a form of support. She and I put on Zoom together once a week, and we dance together for half an hour. So I'm not going to a dance class, I'm dancing with my precious sister-in-law. So again, find non-traditional avenues. And then last in this category, I have a friend who had a husband who was ill. And at David's diagnosis, I turned to her as a mentor. And I said, would we be able to meet together on this journey? And our topic is being the best people we can be, taking care of ourselves. It's not, how do I work the medical system? It's, how do I not lose myself in this journey? So her husband was alive. He was ill from various forms of cancer. He's since passed. And every 2 weeks, we still get together, and that has been fantastic. And the last thing I want to say is to find a safe space early so that you build rapport before you're in crisis. So I just showed you that I'm a group person. I have a women's group. I have a spiritual group. I have art groups. David's not a group guy, and he's not a counseling guy. I found a counselor as soon as David was diagnosed. But David didn't do that because it's not who he is. But since we have processed together about what it's like for me to be really the one he communicates most of his feelings to, that he went, and I'm so grateful, and found a therapist to talk to about what he's feeling, to take some of the burden off of me, though, of course, I want to hear what he's going through. But also, he's aware that he has slow moving ALS. He's very blessed, but things continue to go south. And when he is perhaps in crisis, he already has a therapist who knows him and gets him. And I just am so proud that he started early. Express yourself to the care team. Sometimes as a caregiver, you feel a little invisible in those sessions. So we're key members of the team. One of the things that happened early on was we went to a multidisciplinary meeting, and David shared some things that were symptoms showing up that were very distressing for me to hear, and he hadn't shared them with me. So I've asked him to not surprise me in the clinic meetings. I've expressed that that is too hard for me to process the new information and hear the care team's ideas. So let's talk about it before so that my ears and my nervous system can be ready. And also the patient-centered model of really speaking to the patient, the OT speaking, the PT speaking, the neurologist speaking, social work speaking to the individual is awesome. And as a caregiver, you see things differently. So it's important for me, when David's done talking, I would wish that the professionals would ask me, Linda, do you have anything to share, with David's permission, of course? But also, if they don't, to go, I'd like to clarify something. An example in one meeting was the doctor had heard David say, my walking has slowed down. And he wrote down, walking has slowed down. But David's walking, when we first met, he could go 25 miles and then he could go 15. Fine. But he's down to now a quarter mile with rests on an exceedingly good day. And some days he's not comfortable going from the bedroom to the kitchen because he's exhausted. So I need the doctor to hear that. Thank you, David, for letting me be a speaker, even when that's not how you would have worded it. And that comes down to caregivers have rights, and expressing them does not make you selfish. So don't be afraid to speak up. Tell your spouse it's important for your voice to be heard, for the team and also for you as a person, with a front row view to something very scary.
I sometimes push back to on what Linda says, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm happy that she does. And sometimes the things that she says are important and add nuance that I wouldn't have expressed myself particularly. So another area is to ask professionals for ideas for challenges. So a couple of examples. I'm wearing a shirt right now that looks like a regular button shirt, but it's actually magnetic. So I can just rip it open and then it snaps itself closed. So even though
I call that shirt, of which David has many, I call it his Superman shirt. He goes from Clark Kent to Superman. Boo! It's so fun.
and I can still do buttons, but I reach for these shirts more than my button shirts because it's easier. And I'm aware that when the time comes that I have trouble with buttons, I will be able to get dressed without having to call on Linda to do basic things. There are also a lot of adapted devices out there, utensils, cutting boards, and the professionals can guide you to some of them. And then some we've invented ourselves. For example, in the photograph where I'm wearing that funny looking outfit, that's a robe that I use when I shower that saves me the energy of having to flip a towel around behind me and have to navigate all of those extra steps. I found something online for surfers that they would use to get dressed at the beach, and a friend with a sewing machine cut it down the front and hemmed it up, and now I use that for every shower at home, and it's a huge energy saver for me, and not needing to call on Linda to come help me out with stuff.
So it's really a towel for you, not so much a robe,
A
right there.
towel. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
towel.
excellent. Anything else, David?
Nope.
We're in the ask section now, and I wanted to talk about asking peers. This picture is us at the ALS MND convention in Switzerland, where David was a patient fellow. And we were really nervous to go to this thing because, oh my gosh, we're going to see so many people who are so much farther along in their ALS journey than we are. And what if we get depressed? Or what if it, I don't know, sends us down a scary road? So we were nervous, but we went. And the fact is, we learned so much. We've never done this before, and we could ask others who are further along than we are on the journey, not just professionals. This gentleman here gave us so much advice about adapted technology and voice banking. He doesn't
Ultimate
speak
communication.
altered, thank you for the term. This gentleman, all the movement he has is his eyes, and he can blink for yes and no, but he's using adapted communication such that we had complete communication together. And you might meet him and think, oh, is he all in there? Oh my gosh, he's invented things. He does speaking all over the world. And it was inspiring to us uh, to meet him and so many other people who have very later stages of ALS and are doing service and are living fully. He and his family came from Japan to Switzerland for this event. So yes, it can be scary, but actually being with all these people decreased our anxiety. So just something I wanted to share. And last, that people and organizations are generally willing to share tips and tools and research news and hopes because there's so much out there, so many different organizations, and it's hard to keep up with it. So you can go to somebody and ask questions that maybe you weren't clear about until you saw a poster about it or you heard somebody speaking about it. Or maybe it's just one of your fears and you can ask somebody who's been there. Thanks. David, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Uh, we do lean a lot on family and friends. And one example for us is that Linda likes to be able to go away on trips without me, which I really encourage her to do. I may not always, but for now I do. And when I send an email out to a group of friends and family who live close by who have expressed interest in helping, and I set up a service of a daily visit. So someone can come and help me finish the dishes or fold the laundry or do a load of laundry, those things that I don't have the energy to do or that are hard to do from my wheelchair, and they can finish that off for me, as well as having social time and maybe a meal together. So it's really important to notice who shows up. There's some people who we found have stepped forward that I wouldn't have thought, and other people who have kind of stepped back. So really focus on the ones who have stepped forward and try not to stress about those who have stepped back. And the presentation just disappeared on my screen. There it is. Also, for both of us, communicating what is and what isn't helpful is really good. There are times that that people will jump in to do something and it's not actually productive. So trying to be clear about those sorts of things is really helpful. and just watch out for the angels who step in when you least expect.
And again, I'm a more emotional person, and I was really thrown by somebody who um, wasn't there for us when I felt like we had been there for that person. And I kind of spun on that. And it wasn't helpful because there were so many beautiful people who were stepping forward. So, again, I've got a counselor to work through those things. But catch yourself if you're obsessing about things that really aren't necessary.
Then asking for help is really, really helpful. Even people who really have no skills with ALS or MND don't know anything about it, but they want to be able to help. So this example is a friend who made a base for my chair that made it easier for me to get in and out of by sitting a little higher. And we have a friend who used to be a chef, and we asked her to cook an extra meal for us when she was cooking for her family. And then we could pick that up from her and save ourselves the cooking. So the friends who have been able to do things like this have appreciated being able to help, and we've really appreciated having their assistance. Friends with 3D printers are also real good gifts.
David alluded to my needing to get away sometimes. I like going away with my girlfriends or visiting family with and without David, but respite support, just having a break since we went from one kind of a life to another kind of a life at diagnosis. So asking yourself who can step in so that the caregiver can step out, and making a specific list of duties that are important to you that a caregiver does or that they attend to. Invite the person to drop in and observe and learn, and start slow and early, because if David is at an extreme place in his disease, that would be a lot. But if people are with us as we walk in the direction, then they can learn too. And again, David's sister has been really great about that. And a best friend from Arizona has flown in for the weekend and been with David while I will head out. And he's asked for a list of things in the house that need doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So start slow and early. And as David just shared, that he sent an ask to people to help me be able to have more breaks. Time is a trickster. I alluded to E, express, A, ask, T, time. Time is a trickster. On the one hand, for now, ALS is a terminal disease. Time feels like it is slipping away. Our parents lived it to be, 50 years of marriage. I hope for that, but I'm not sure. So it's slipping away. And there's a desire for us to slow down the clock. Patients and caregivers may see time and the timeline differently, so it's important to talk about it. David has said to me that his goal is 50 years of marriage, and I'm like, okay, but I'm not there. I don't believe that. So it's okay for us both to have different views.
And another area of difference is that because of Linda's experience working with people with disabilities, she tended to look forward to the future and be thinking years ahead of what we might be facing, where I was more looking at my past year and how I've changed and looking more at what's not going to happen. So that was a big difference in our time sense.
Even at diagnosis, when the doctor said that he had a slow moving form, I was like, who's ever heard of a slow moving form of ALS? We've lost people in 2 years and 3 years. And I know that people on this screen, you have fast moving ALS. And so you will have to take into account what we're saying and adapt it for your lives, which you have been doing always. But again, for the caregiver, EATS. And cherish the time you got. On the other hand, everything takes more time. As Anne Marie said, we're Team Tortoise. That's our fundraising name, but it's also our name because David is moving very slowly. And the the need for rest is great. And that's just a reality. It comes slowly and slowly, but it's about being slow. And then as the caregiver, I have more to do. I have all of David's chores and less time to do it. I shouldn't say all, sorry, David. He does a lot of our
Yeah.
computer work, but I do it really the lion's share of home things and social and lots of things like that. Anyway, for me, getting out the door takes maybe 3 times as long, even when David's not with me, because I have my 10 minutes of things I got to do, find the keys, grab my phone, etc. But David has 10 minutes of things he needs from me. Can I get him the sweater out of the closet? Can I refill his water bottle? Can I find his iPad? And those need to happen before I head to an appointment. So what I'm doing now is starting much earlier. And then in terms of everything taking more time, chores are done. If David is doing them, he needs rest breaks. So he may begin something and then sit for a while. That was confusing to me at the beginning. Now I understand it. And for me, I may be interrupted when I'm doing a chore because David has, dropped his phone on the ground and he needs me to pick it up because he's in the middle of making calls. Davey, can you take this one?
Yep. So definitely for us, we found that being prepared is really important. So I think of it as I use a children's clothing analogy that when you buy clothing for children, you buy it when it's long and then they grow into it. I try to use that same thing for being prepared. So getting the cane when I'm out here, I don't quite need it yet, but I'm used to it by the time I do need it. And then the same for the walker and the same for the wheelchair, for breathing assistance, all those sorts of things. So being prepared in advance helps to avoid the crisis that maybe you don't have a ramp in the house and you need it now, but it's going to take 6 weeks or 2 months to get that all together and get the ramp built. And then also handing off responsibilities. Linda, it has taken on things like rolling the garbage bins to the curb and bringing them back in, and she's doing basically all of the cooking and the cleaning. But I'm still paying bills. I'm still doing taking care of lining people up for the household maintenance. And it's going to be different for every family, every couple, but we do need to be planning ahead for the times when I need to transition those kinds of tasks off to her too. We don't know when that'll be or even if it will need to happen, but finding ways to share passwords and to for me, assuring Linda that the way I do bills isn't the way she needs to do bills, the same for banking and taxes. So we've tried to set up systems to be prepared so that she can take over and do things in her way. And I have to really work hard at not butting in when she has a task that it's hers and not mine anymore.
So I'm looking at the time and I realize we're running short. And as always, I'm behind. So now the S is so important. It's self-care. And I know all the caregivers in the audience are going, blah, 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 blah. It's impossible. Wake up. I am running nonstop. I'm caring for my partner and kids and, I'm transferring him or her, etc. So much is going on. But I'm asking you to hear me out. We've all heard the better you can take care of yourself, the better you can take care of your partner. But wait, I'm going to turn that on its head and say, you should do self-care because you matter. Everyone deserves to be first on the list. It cannot just be the David show in our life. It can't be. It's not sustainable for me. Caregivers are constantly filling the cups of others. And self-care is one of the ways that angels replenish their souls. Self-care matters, but it's very individual. It doesn't define you. You're not you used to be an engineer and now you are a caregiver. It's one new and important part of you. And at the beginning, that was hard. I'm like, who am I now? And remember, you have rights, and expressing them, I'm repeating this, does not make you selfish. So think about self-care, all of you that are going blah, 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 blah. Could you just take a cup of tea and sit outdoors? Research shows that just time outside can reduce anxiety and replenish us. Self-care is both very individual and universally important. So again, begin with that cup of tea. It might be a challenge for you. Maybe you're good at short things like tea, but what about a weekend away? Could a family member, could you hire someone to come in and be with your partner? And then I want to talk about intimacy. It can be very satisfying to just lie naked with your spouse. You are not a nurse and a patient. You are partners, and intimacy is important. Get out for a walk. This is especially for the caregiver. Sing while you're folding clothes. Go for exercise or maybe chocolate or both. And that anything that's good for you and is centered on you is self-care. Also, there are so many tedious tasks when you're a caregiver. That's my mom in the background, and I was her caregiver in Ohio, and I worked so hard to get her a handicap parking pass that when it came, I said, "Hey, Mom, it's a miracle. The handicap parking placard finally came. Let's bust out the champagne." So celebrate the wins, or else it's just Groundhog's Day, same over and over, more paperwork, more challenges, but celebrate. Also, remember that self-care is your call. It replenishes me to babysit babies and to feel them and to be with little preschoolers and to play Legos and trains. But all of a sudden, since I'm David's caregiver, people are not wanting to impose. And they're saying, "Oh, you're already caregiving for David." You know what? It's for me to decide. And I am telling you, no, I don't want a manicure. Yes, I want to babysit your children and feel good about caregiving your kids while you go on a date. That replenishes me, but it might not replenish somebody else. Also, and David alluded to this at the beginning, is I get stressed out. Self-care means knowing when your nervous system is beginning to feel dysregulated, to take note of your physical and your psychological symptoms. Caregiving can be exhausting, thankless, and frustrating. Remember, I told you that I had that friend that I meet with every 2 weeks one-on-one? There was a time in July, I just picked up the phone, called her, and I said, "SOS, I am mad. I am angry at David. I am irritable." And she's like, "Meet me at our favorite tea spot." And we went and we talked, and she was so good. She just reminded me it's understandable for caregivers to get overwhelmed, irritable, fall apart, withdraw, or snap at people. Caregiver burnout is real, and self-care can help. But also, David and I had to have a few conversations because I had shifted my role. I was automatically cleaning up his socks off the ground. That wasn't what we did for 30 years, but he was too tired if he got his socks off to get him to the laundry basket. But then I need a please, or I need some awareness. I'd walk into the kitchen and it just would always be dishes and always be breadcrumbs. So we had to talk about, are we at a new stage? What's going on? Because right now I feel surprised by all of these tasks, and I'm not getting enough please and thank yous. So we had conversations and we came away better. David and I were better for having my expressing myself. And you know what? I'm not a superhero. Forgiving myself for barking at him. "Oh, my husband has ALS and I just screamed at him." Hello, I screamed at him before. It's not who we generally are, but I hit a wall. So that wall taught me, what do I need to get more centered. And then I have to somehow make it happen, because if I'm overwhelmed, I'm overwhelmed. But still, I matter. And one of David's greatest fears is what happens to David if something bad happens to me. So if I am a stress head all the time, that's not good for both of us. So I'm going to scooch ahead because I'm behind here. It's okay to ask your person with ALS to wait for you to finish what you're doing, to remind them to say thank you. Oh, we have a typo there. I have to fix that. Ask for work accommodations. Many of you are working, so you can ask your workplace for accommodations. Can you work from home? Can you pay a team to chop vegetables, fold laundry, mow the lawn? Can you get a nap when your partner is napping? That was a tough one for me. I'm not a napper, but I'm exhausted sometimes. You can and should laugh and participate in things you enjoy. You can piss and moan to your friends. It's okay and it's good to let your partner see you cry. Those tears just show your love. And also feel gratitude simultaneously with grief. It's important to take ALS breaks. Self-care for both of us means engaging in things we enjoy together and not talking about ALS. So remember, the talk today is Angels in Agony. There are moments of agony. ALS means always losing something. And as a care provider, MND means that I must notice David's decline, his deficits, his disability to keep him safe. That's a lot. So yes, there's agony, but there are also moments of sweetness beyond measure. Time is precious. We pay attention to that. What are our priorities for the time David and I have left? He believes we're going to make it to our 50th wedding anniversary. I don't. So what do we need to do together? We need to make decisions together. Do we want to travel the world or just stay home and play with our dog? Do we want to read together or do we want to get involved in activism or both? Caregivers can be better rather than bitter. But for me, and what I would really ask of every caregiver out there and every person with ALS to remind their caregiver is to express yourself, ask for help, know that time changes and that self-care is essential. And I have a friend who had a husband with ALS. She said she didn't think of herself as a caregiver. She thought of the two of them as caring for one another. That is beautiful. And it's a reminder that your person with ALS is also trying to take care of you. Also, your ALS professional organizations and your care manager can help you find resources. There are resources out there. So David and I want to say thanks for listening and helping to empower caregivers. Just 3 cheers for all the angels, the professionals, the caregivers, and the folks with ALS. And what each of us is doing really matters. So we'd like to open it up for questions, but before we do that, I just want to say that I do coaching and speaking on many topics. David and I do speaking together. And also, as Anne-Marie mentioned, David has a book called Paris, City of Cultures about adapted travel in Paris, but it's kind of informative about adapted travel other places. And that would be our encouragement to you to get out of the house, do staycations, but also take real vacations. Thank you.
Linda and David, thank you so much. That presentation was filled with so many tips. And I love the acronym EATS. It's something so visible, but also catchy, and I can remember it off the top of my head. I love that. It looks like we have a question that came in, and this could be probably for both of you. So this person has found a caregiver support group to be really helpful, but their partner doesn't really seem to want to talk in an ALS support group. David, do you have any thoughts on this? Is this, they're wondering, is this typical? Would it be helpful for the person living with ALS to talk about their ALS in a support group?
Well, I can't speak for typical. I can only speak for me. I have not joined any kind of ALS support group. I have I think where I've found my ALS support is in some of the meetings that Linda talked about, that we've been to a variety of different fundraisers and meetings and technical meetings that are places where I'm interacting with other people who have ALS, and I'm learning from them and getting support from them and being able to support other people at the same time. So for me, I think that's my support group. So everyone has an individual way of doing things. Linda may encourage me to join a support group, and someday I might, but for now, that's something that I haven't done.
And one of the things David has done that I have done less of is engage online with the forums and Facebook groups where he can ask a question and people get back to him with answers. And I think that that's been another way that we've interacted. To the question, I would say, why, why as the caregiver are you wanting your partner to have a support group? Because maybe it isn't the support group, maybe there's another answer. So there was a time where I said to David, I'm getting external support. I think it would be good for you. And he was like, I think I'm good. And I said, we talk about this a lot, and I can't have it be all me holding emotional space for you. And I am not an unbiased observer, and I give opinions too much because I'm your wife. What if you had somebody listen that didn't have skin in the game of our life like you do? So I might come back to the question of what is it you think your partner needs? And might there be many, many other options out there? David and I have both read books by other people, Tuesdays with Maury and other stories. David, Norm's last name is?
Norman McIsaac wrote a book that I enjoyed, and also Lucy Wedemeyer wrote a book about her journey with her husband.
Right.
So I find a lot of power and support by reading other people's experiences.
And then we've met Norm and Lucy multiple times at these organizational meetings we go to learn more about the research and the medicines and all of these things and fundraisers. So they're real people in the community.
That's a really good point. I think you also highlighted that, everybody's a little bit different. So, Linda, you said you're somebody who, I hope it's safe to say, are a bit more extroverted and maybe find a lot of joy and kind of need that one-on-one group maybe experience, whereas some other people might be a little bit more internal, might be a little bit more um, introverted. And so attending a support group or participating in the support group just it doesn't kind of align with what they need. And maybe attending is enough for them versus attending and participating or, things like that.
And another thing that I get support at that wouldn't work for everyone is I'm learning about genetics. I got a Genetics for Dummies book, and I'm finding that very supportive because I'm understanding so much more about the science that I hear about and understanding some of the details of what's going on in the research.
And then you brought up a beautiful way of, like asking for help. And I know oftentimes we know that we may need help. Do you have any advice on how to ask for help? Because I know that can be a little tricky. We may know that we need help, but we don't necessarily know how to ask our circle, or family members, or friends, or neighbors. So that, things like that.
I think for me, one of the ways that I go about asking for help is I write down what I'm asking for, and then I show it to Linda or maybe to one of my family members or a friend and get their feedback on how I've worded it, whether what I'm asking is reasonable or not, and then with Linda particularly, who might be good people to be able to provide that support. And then I would either send that email out or go talk to someone in person, depending on what feedback. But for me, writing down what I'm thinking I need helps me define whether that's really what I need or whether there might be some tweaks to that.
And I would just add uh, um, the idea of reframing in your own mind. Everybody on this call and in this world are good people who have helped people in the past. And it feels good to help people. It feels good to pay it forward. And so think about it that way, is just as you felt good about babysitting your friend's kids or driving somebody to the hospital or making a casserole if somebody's passed away and bringing it to the family. Why wouldn't people want to do that for us? It's a gift to them and it's a gift to us.
And I love the example. I think too, kind of pairing, we all know our friends or families like superpowers. So I loved the advice you gave on, you have a friend who is a chef, and I'm sure that's one of their love languages, right? So being able to ask them, hey, if you're making XYZ, do you mind making a little bit extra? That would be a huge help for us. Or a friend who, David, as you mentioned, has a 3D printer. I bet you have a lot of very cool engineering friends. Um, so being able to kind of pair, like, I'm running into this issue. I think but I can't physically do it. Could you help me problem solve how to get out of my chair a little bit easier? I think it just needs to be a little bit higher, and kind of bringing those brains together. So kind of pairing what you need with the friends and family in your circle. I think that's great.
Yeah, knowing who to ask which questions.
Yeah. All right. Linda, David. Oh, hold on. There was one more question that put in here. Um, oh, okay. And maybe this could be an additional talk, but Linda and David, any advice on traveling? Because the mere idea to this person just kind of feels overwhelming.
So we have done a lot of traveling since diagnosis, because we both have loved travel and had planned to do that in retirement, but realized that that's going to get harder and harder. It can be overwhelming. What kind of travel someone does is going to be very dependent on what their specific limitations are with the disease, as well as their desires and interests. So we've tried to use different modes of travel to be able to expand our reach and maybe look at ways that we can continue traveling in the future. So we've traveled by plane, we've done driving trips. You can rent a van with a mobility van if you need that and you don't have one to use. We've done some cruises, which if you book early enough to get the accessible rooms, there are very few on most ships. But if you can book early enough to get an adapted room, then that can be really good, especially if you live close enough to a port that you could drive there and you don't need to deal with airplane travel. There are also there's a Facebook group for traveling with ALS, and I'm sure that there are other sources. There are definitely lots of websites for disability travel, um, and some of them specific for ALS.
That's great advice. And I wonder, oh, go ahead,
May I?
Linda. Yeah,
As
please.
the caregiver, I do a lot for David when we travel. I didn't know that I was as physically strong as I am because I'm now, I've got more luggage. I'm the carrying, I'm the putting up, but we also have brought our niece and nephew on a trip, and, they get a trip and we get strong
Now,
20 somethings, and that was awesome. So again, they love their uncle and are happy to help, and they're very happy to get a free trip. So um, get creative with
they took their role seriously. They were running interference for me and lifting and carrying and doing everything.
yeah. And I love travel, and I love traveling with David, and I intend to travel even when he is too ill to travel, and I will travel in the future if he's not here. So it's something important to me. But I say to him sometimes, I need this trip to be with you because this is so you. I can't imagine doing this without you. So, yeah, just check in with yourself. What kind of travel? How long? I wouldn't start international travel at this point if you've never done it. I would drive to a state park and think one night and then see how it goes.
Oh, I love that idea. Start small. It doesn't have to be, this big grand adventure. The other thing I would say is if you are attending a multidisciplinary clinic, reaching out to, I mean, Linda's a recreational therapist by background. So kind of has a Mary Poppins bag of tricks, I bet. But your occupational therapist, your physical therapist, like that multidisciplinary team can be a great resource on helping you with whatever type of travel you want to do, whether, like Linda said, drive an hour away, or maybe it's just to get out to dinner. And then the more you do it, the more comfortable you may be.
But one last thing
Yeah.
is set your expectations because
Right.
we can't do as much as we used to. I need to plan an extra day sometimes just to rest or to do one activity a day, or if I'm going to do two, to plan a down day. So you have to set your expectations differently than it might have been.
Oh,
And hotels and museums, the term accessible isn't always what you expect it to be. And so you want to be very specific about, do you need a roll-in shower? Do you need grab bars? I mean, if you say accessible, you may not get even a wheelchair accessible room. You might get a deafness accessible room or visual impairment room. So be specific.
well, with that, thank you everyone for attending today. Like I said, this is being recorded. So if you know somebody who wasn't able to attend, they'll be able to watch this. In the next day or two, we should have that up on our website. I want to reinforce Linda at Surprise Enterprise. Um, Check out her website. Feel free to email her. And then our next learning series will be Monday, March 31st with Dr. Barry from Mass General Hospital. He'll be talking about observational studies, and that registration should be up on our website again within the next week or two. Thank you all. David, Linda, thank you again for sharing your journey with us. And everyone, stay well. We'll see you in March.
Thanks for being here with us.
This was fantastic to be with you all. Thanks.